What's going on, hikers? In today's video, my goal is to demystify backpacking. I really wish that somebody would have made this video, or I would have found a video like this whenever I first started backpacking, because it just seems like backpacking can be overwhelming. Like, where do you start? Where do you get your gear? How do you pick where to go? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And like I said, the goal of this video is to kind of give you a general idea of how backpacking works and the different options that you would have with your gear and your trips, etc. So the first thing I want to talk about is the different types of backpacking. So you could have through hiking. That is a very popular type of backpacking. Basically, you pick a trail, whether it's a long trail or a short trail, like the Appalachian Trail, which is thousands of miles long, or the Pacific Crest Trail, again thousands of miles long, and it's going to take you months. Or you can pick a shorter trail to through hike, like I did the Vermont Long Trail, which took me about a month instead of a few months. Some other types, the Weekend Warrior. Now this is probably the most popular type of backpacking. This is what I do a ton. You spend a night or 2 nights in the woods. Maybe you get off work on Friday and then you head out to the woods Saturday and Sunday, come back and you head back to work on Monday. So that is very friendly to a lot of people's schedule. And then I also want to categorize the front country versus the back country. So back country is like out in the woods, out in nature. Front country is a little bit more cityfied, if you will. For example, this summer I am doing the Camino de Santiago, which is a backpacking trip across Spain. And you go through a lot more cities instead of just staying in the woods the whole time. Could be some more road walking, walking on pavement, dirt roads, that kind of thing. And then you have section hiking, which is basically you take a long trail, like the Appalachian Trail, and you just do sections of it at a time. And then the last type that I have is mountaineering, which I would consider like the extreme version of backpacking. A huge daunting aspect of backpacking is your gear. So I wanted to start with not going into super specifics on each piece of gear that I take with me while I'm out on trail, but I will link in the description all the pieces of gear that I would typically take whenever I'm headed out to the trail. So if you want to use that kind of as a guide of what you should take, let's talk about the big three. So this would be your shelter system, whether you use a tent. Most of the time I use a hammock. You could use a tarp. You could cowboy camp, which is like sleeping under the stars. You also need a sleep system. So that's going to kind of pair with your shelter type. So if you're sleeping in a tent, most people are going to take a sleeping pad, whether it's inflatable or if it's a closed cell foam pad. You also need like a sleeping bag or a quilt, something that's going to insulate the top of you, as where the sleeping pad will insulate the bottom of you and keep you warm from the ground, and it's sucking the warmth from you. And maybe a pillow. Like I like to take a couple of pillows with me. Now the other part of your big three would be your pack. So this I would actually buy last, because your pack has to fit everything that you take. And if you're just starting out, you might bring some budget gear, and a lot of times it's a little bulkier, a little heavier, but at the same time it is cheaper. So entry level, you might need a larger pack than maybe a year or two down the road, whenever you've kind of phased out some of that budget gear if you continue to backpack. And your gear might be a little bit more compact, and you can fit it into a smaller backpack. So the backpack I started with was like a 65-liter backpack, and that still works for me. I still take quite a bit of stuff whenever I'm backpacking, but sometimes I'll take a lot less, or in the summertime I don't need as much insulation, so I might go with a 45-liter pack. Or in the wintertime, I might need a 70-liter pack, because I'm taking all kinds of stuff with me and I'm not backpacking very far in. Now the next aspect of your gear would be your clothing. So you're going to need basically hiking clothes, you are going to need camp clothes, and you're going to need some different clothing dealing with the weather. So for example, most of the time you'll layer whenever you're backpacking, especially if you're going, in the fall or the winter time. Even the shoulder seasons like spring and fall, you can get some extreme temps out there. So you'll layer your clothes. You'll have like a base layer, and you'll have a layer on top of that that's a mid layer, and then maybe an outer layer like an insulated jacket. For example, a puffy jacket insulated with goose down or something like that. And then you might have an outer shell, which would be, for example, your rain jacket or your windbreaker, something along those lines. Same thing can go for down below. So like you're gonna have pants, you're gonna have underwear, you might have long johns or an insulating layer. And then you might take some rain pants or some wind pants that will go over the top of your regular hiking pants or your shorts that you're wearing out there. Next, let's tackle the kitchen. This would typically have a cook pot, something to boil water, or like something to cook your food in. And you might take a cup with you to drink your coffee out of too, but typically you're gonna have one big dish that you can do all your cooking out of and all your eating out of. Or you might just boil water in it and then pour that into one of those dehydrated meals and rehydrate it and eat it out of the package. You're also gonna need a stove, unless you are somebody that likes to just take things and rehydrate them. They call it cold soaking, where you don't actually heat the water up, but that's not really for me. I don't want cold ramen rehydrating in like a peanut butter jar. So I take a stove with me. You can get some really inexpensive ones, some that cost $10, $15, $20, or you can get some high-end ones. Like I like the BRS as a budget option, but as my deluxe option, I take the MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe, which is like an $80 or $90 stove. So the pricing kind of depends on what your needs are and what you want to take. And you'll need to take a gas canister with you in order to use that stove. Of course, unless you're using an alcohol stove. So as you can see, there's a lot of options when it comes to the different pieces of gear. So as you get into backpacking and you learn more about what you like, you can kind of swap out some of that gear. I also wanted to mention I take a knife with me on every trip, and that is, of course, for all the needs around camp, but also for cooking. And then food, which we're going to save that for later and keep that as an entirely separate category. Next up, you have your electronics. So typically I'll take with me my phone, my headlamp. I also like to take a battery pack to recharge all of my devices and stuff like that I'm taking with me. If you want to check out more on the battery packs and kind of what you would need, I'll link a video above that I did recently, and that'll give you a little bit more information on that. And then lastly, I take a satellite communication device. Mine specifically is the Garmin inReach. So it has an SOS button, and I can also text from it and get weather and that kind of stuff, even when I don't have cell phone service on my phone. Next up, I have my toiletries as part of my gear, along with my first aid. Now, toiletries is gonna be anything hygiene related for me. That's gonna be like my night bag with, toothbrush, floss, anything like that that you would use in your normal routine at home. But I also have toilet paper, of course, for doing the number 2. I'll take a bidet, a little pocket bidet with me, so that it can help keep me a little cleaner, some powder to keep me fresh, and some soap to wash your hands, some Germ-X or hand sanitizer. And then for the first aid, that kind of goes hand in hand with my toiletries. So you can buy a first aid kit, and you can kind of take things out that you think that you might not use. And you can also add things in, like some people, they'll buy these first aid kits and then it doesn't have a tourniquet or something that you're very, very familiar with that you think would be very, very important to take. Just add that in. And then the stuff that you take out is going to help get rid of a little bit of that extra weight that you might not need to be carrying. I wanted to wrap up the gear portion of the video with water purification, and then I'm going to move on to some other aspects of backpacking. So you can use iodine or Akamura tablets, but they will purify the water. There's a wait period from the time you use it and the time you can drink the water. So whenever you're out on trail, a lot of times you'll get to a water source and you'll want to do what's called cameling up. So you're wanting to drink as much water as possible while you're at the water source, and then take with you a bunch of more water. Well, you can't really do that if you're having to wait 30 minutes and then drink your water while you're waiting on the water to purify from the tablets. So the workaround on that is to use a water filter. Typically, I will use the Sawyer Squeeze or the Platypus Quick Draw. Those are 2 great filters. They filter out all the bad stuff that would make you sick or give you diarrhea, but they don't change the flavor of the water, which sometimes is a problem, because if you're drinking some not so clean water, some icky, some fishy water, you'll kind of taste that in your mouth whenever you're drinking the water, even after it's filtered. So to get around that, I'll take some water flavorings, but seeing how dehydration is one of my main enemies while I'm out on trail, I like to take something that not only will flavor the water, but it also will kind of rehydrate me. And my go-to would be Element. They have a bunch of different flavors. They got mango chili, lemon habanero. They got chocolate salt, which is really good in the morning. It's kind of like a chocolate protein shake. Watermelon salt, orange salt, raw unflavored raspberry salt, and citrus salt. And if you want to try them, you can just get one of these sample packs. Element is today's video sponsor, and every order you place is going to come with a sample pack. And in the sample pack, it's got every flavor. And then if you want to order some more, you can either buy it in a box like this. These are a 30 count, or you can get an entire big box if you want to save a little money on it. I'll show you. You can get a 120 count. So if you want to check them out, if you want to fight off dehydration and rehydrate yourself with sodium, potassium, and magnesium, then check out Element. You can use my link, which is drinkelement.com/Jeremiah. That is DRINKLMNT.com/Jeremiah. And place an order there, try them out, try out the samples, so next time you order, you can get a flavor that you're absolutely gonna love. It's time to talk about food. One of my favorite things about backpacking. It's kind of my excuse to eat whatever I want. But I do have a system on how I plan out my meals whenever I'm going out into the backcountry. You don't have to use my method. This is just one idea. I'll give you a couple of quick ideas of how other people do it. I like to do a little grid, and I'll throw a picture in here so you can see it. Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack. It's really important to get enough calories while you're out there in order to sustain your energy levels and to just kind of motivate you as you keep hiking. You know, your energy levels will dump, and then you're like, I got to backpack up this mountain. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to stop and eat me a little fruit snack, and then I'm going to power on. So I will like plan out my entire day if I'm doing like the weekend warrior style where I'm gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And in the grid, I'll literally write in there, you know, for breakfast I'm having, you know, coffee, I'm having a little biscuit, I'm having a couple of packets of oatmeal, and then I will put them in a Ziploc bag for each day. So I have day 1, day 2, day 3. But whenever I'm through hiking, like I did on the Vermont Long Trail, that's not how I did it. I just went to the store and I would buy enough food, what I would think would take me, you know, through the woods for 3 or 4 days, and then I come back into town. So it's really going to depend on what type of journey you're going on. Some people are very anal about it. They will plan out every meal and every calorie, and they'll estimate, I think I'm going to burn, you know, 5,000, 10,000 calories a day. This is how much I got to put in. If you're out there for a while, you're probably going to cut some weight because you just can't eat enough food to keep up with how much hiking you're doing. You can take different types of food, so I'm not going to spend too long on food, but the main thing is to take as much food as possible with as light as weight as possible. So some things are very calorically dense. You don't want to take foods that they're not really going to give you a whole lot of calories and they're going to be heavy. So you can do things to add calories as well, like add oil, like vegetable oil to your meals, just to get a few more calories in there. I did make a video a few years ago pertaining to how much food you'd need for like a weekend hike. I'll link it. Don't cringe too much. Hopefully my videos are a lot better now. I don't know, but that would give you a true idea of exactly what I'm taking on a weekend trip. Now we need to talk about getting ready. So everything that we've talked about so far in the video has kind of led up to piecing it all together and putting a nice little ribbon on it right now. I have a few different avenues that we're going to take here. One is physically ready. You have to be up to the task, the physical demands of the trail. So if you're not, maybe hike in a mile, sleep there, hike back to your car the next day, and kind of do that a few times. You know, getting your legs under you, figuring out how your gear feels on your back, what you can do to improve your cardiovascular health, go to the gym, lift weights, walk around your neighborhood, that kind of thing. But mentally ready is just as important as physically ready. You know, you have those physical demands out there of carrying that weight, but your head has to be in the game. Some would argue that it's even more important than physically ready. So the mental readiness, there's a few different things that you have to tackle when it comes to that. One would be how to use your gear. So if you have a backyard, set your gear up in the backyard and try it out. You want to know how to use every piece of gear inside and out before you ever reach the trail. If you don't have a backyard, maybe you live in the city, set it up in your living room if you can. Anywhere that you have enough room to kind of figure out and tinker with your gear and see how it works before you head out on trail. Because what you don't want to do is be out there, it's 40 degrees and raining, it's your first time setting up your tent, and you're risking your life because you could get hypothermia out there. Another thing you have to be mentally ready for is your first aid. Know how to use your first aid kit. I take that SOS satellite device, so just in case if it's something that is life or death, I can hit that. But small things like blisters, maybe a cut, that kind of stuff, you need to be able to treat yourself, because there's not going to be really anybody out there that you can rely on when it comes to first aid. So have that figured out. And then navigation, another huge aspect. We're going to talk just here in a second about kind of figuring out your location and stuff for your trip, but know how to use a map and a compass, or learn how to use it. You can also use apps on your phone like All Trails or Onyx, Backcountry. Those types of tools would be huge in helping aid you figuring out how to navigate while you're out on trail. And then leave no trace. Leave no trace. Two of the huge aspects are whatever you take in, bring it out with you. And then, if you're out there and you have to poop while you're out on trail, know the proper protocol for that. Dig a cat hole 6 inches deep, poop in there, cover it back up. Don't do it near water sources or the trail. Now, the logistics of your trip. You need to plan out the different parts of your trip, especially transportation to the trailhead, where you're going to go on the journey, and then transportation back. So if you're doing an end-to-end hike, which means you're not hiking back to where you started, then you might want to take 2 vehicles. 2 of you drive, you meet, you kind of shuttle back and forth and leave a vehicle where you start and leave a vehicle where you end. You could also use a shuttle driver. So you could pay somebody, you could park at where you're going to end at, and then pay somebody to shuttle you to where you're beginning. Or you can do a loop trail. So the logistics might just be parking at the trailhead and you hike the loop back to your vehicle. Maybe it's going to take a couple days, who knows. But you have to figure out the logistics before you head out while you're out on trail. And that same thing goes true for your permits. So a lot of places that you're going to backpack at, you'll have to buy a permit for it. Most of the time they're pretty cheap. You should buy them because they're going to help preserve the environment out there. Most of the time those permits are just going to restoring or keeping the current state of the area that you're backpacking in. So definitely, if there's a permit required, buy that permit, help support that economy in that area, and support the maintenance of the trail and the backcountry that you're headed to. This kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about, but leave a trip plan with your family or a friend. Give them a time and a date that you're supposed to be done by, or sometime that they're supposed to hear from you by. That way, if they don't, they can send somebody to search for you. So I always think that's a good idea. Some people even go as far as to take their boot print and put it on something and leave it in the windshield of the car. I don't know really how good of an idea that is. Some people leave a note and stuff in their car, but I always think if somebody sees that, would they be more inclined to break into my vehicle because they know I'm not going to be back until a certain time? I don't know. So kind of use your own judgment, but at least leave a detailed plan with a family or a loved one or a friend that you can count on. I also think it's a great idea to not wait until the last minute to pack up your gear. Now, I am a procrastinator, and I will wait, and I need the pressure of whatever's about to happen in order to push me across the finish line and to do the tasks on my to-do list. But when it comes to packing for a trip, I try not to do it the night before because I always forget something. So I like to make a list, and then I'll go through and make sure I have everything, but sometimes stuff just doesn't make it into your pack. And that's why you want to do it at least a couple of days ahead of time. That way, when the time comes for you to head out, you can double check your gear. Now, with your gear, you might want to do some shakedown hikes, especially if you're going on a longer backpacking trip. And a shakedown hike is basically where you go out and you test out all your gear. It might just be a hike, that's a half mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, I don't know, but you might not even spend the night out there. You might just be trying out your gear at a campground next to your car. So if anything fails, you can just hop in the car and you're good to go. Or you might just be throwing it on, kind of filling it out, seeing how you packed your backpack up, pack it, repack it, pack it, repack it, get everything lined up where it's going to be the most ergonomical and the most efficient for you. Now, I couldn't cover everything to deal with backpacking in this video, so that's why I'm counting on you in the comments to tell me what are some things that are important that I missed out on. So comment that below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give me one of these, subscribe to the channel, and kick that notification bell for the latest notifications. We'll see you in the next one.